Hey, welcome back, everyone, once again to the Football Goons podcast. We are back once again this week, obviously, with yet another week of breaking down our latest fantasy football rankings. This week, we're going to discuss the running back position. And we're going to break this down into two parts because, quite honestly, yes, we love us some running backs, but this is a really deep position that we feel like needs to have more discussion than kind of racing through 30 backs. So we want to give it the proper amount of time. So we'll break it down into two parts. We're going to talk about our top 20 this week and get a little bit more into detail with those players. It's arguably the most important position in all of fantasy. And we only say arguably because we're just trying to be respectful of people that disagree, but it is the most important position in all of fantasy. So we want to make sure we give it the time it deserves. So I'm not going to waste too much time here, but just, we're like 6 weeks away at the most of seeing at least some preseason football here. Are you guys itching anywhere near as bad as I am to see some football?
Awful. Absolutely awful. Thank God there was a Harry Potter marathon on TBS this weekend. Otherwise, I don't know what I would have done all weekend long.
Should have found something else anyways.
No, I'm with you on that one. You're a lone deal on not liking HP.
Not alone. South doesn't like it.
I just don't know anything about it. So
South doesn't know.
You're better off because of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I find myself like on weeknights when they just play classic games and stuff, I'll just be sitting there watching it, and every time I get the same comment, like, why are you watching this game? Like, didn't you just see this? Like, how could you watch an old game? And it's just the itch for some football.
Right.
Just the fact that it's on my TV and it's football and it's there, I'm going to watch it. But we're inching closer and closer, and we've got a lot of fantasy drafting to prepare for, so let's get right into it tonight. Let's talk about numbers 1 through 5, and the way that we've got it here, 1 through 5 is Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, and Saquon Barkley at number 5. What we do here is we all rank our players, and then we take the composite ranking, the average, and that's what determines our overall ranking. So we might not all agree 100%. I will tell you this. Number 1, Todd Gurley is unanimous for us. The rest of the top 5, we do have some deviation, aka the difference in average of where we're ranking these players. So what level of regression, if any, do you worry about with Todd Gurley coming off of 19 touchdowns last year?
I think there's bound to be some, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no bigger fan of that guy than myself, but I mean, 19 touchdowns historically is impossible to repeat for an NFL player.
Yep.
So Todd's unlikely to get there. The good news for those looking to draft him, in half PPR, he finished 52 points ahead of running back number 2, Le'Veon Bell. He finished 72 points ahead of running back number 3, which is Alvin Kamara. In fact, if he just repeats his yardage and receptions, this is going to blow your mind if you haven't looked this up. I'm throwing it out there. I'm warning you. If you haven't looked this up, this is about to blow your mind. You guys ready?
I can't wait.
I'm going to pretend the other two are just as excited. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited. So I'm excited. I'm excited enough for the three of us.
If all he does is catch the same number of passes and run and receive for this, and for some ungodly reason scores 0 touchdowns this year, he would have finished last year as the RB7.
That's wow.
He would have been 7th in half PPR among running backs with no touchdowns at all. 0 touchdowns from Todd Gurley. You're still getting an RB1. So the reason I'm bringing that up more than anything, dude can survive some touchdown regression, man. He can.
Yeah, I mean, if he would have regressed 5 or 6 touchdowns last year, he still would have been RB1.
Right.
So, like, just an interesting
stat. He
can
regress 8. He can go 11 touchdowns. He was your RB1 last year, and he scored 19.
So, just for the sake of conversation here, since 2000, there have been 23 instances where running back scored 18 or more touchdowns. Over half of those have scored 11 or less the following season. So, just by, historical data, we're looking for a regression. I guess I'm just trying to figure out like where do we kind of ballpark that?
I think, obviously he can afford to lose some of these touchdowns and still finish RB1, which is why we're all so high on him and still have him RB1, because unlike a lot of other backs, he's not touchdown dependent. I look at it like this. 19 is too unrealistic to ask for again. But even if he averages, 3/4 of a touchdown per game, that would put him in like the 10 to 12 range. You know what I mean? And I think that's where you want your number one fantasy running back to be. You want it to be in double digits, which I think he absolutely will be. I just think 19 is just too hard to sustain on a regular basis. Miles said it before, it's impossible. It's almost, I don't think it's ever been done where a guy had over 19 or more on consecutive seasons.
Yeah, and I did research for the last 10 years, and there's only been 5 guys who have scored 19. And it's never been repeated in that. And not only that, they had a huge drop-off. A lot of that was because their names were Arian Foster, Shady McCoy, and Jamal Charles. So that was a lot of the drop-off. So you can just you know why. But either he gets injured this year or he just doesn't repeat. Those are the options from the last 10 years. So I don't – even on that offense, I don't think he can repeat. And, without looking it up, I couldn't have even told you who his backup running back is. So he's getting the ball, but I don't think he's getting 19.
It was Lance Dunbar, if I'm not mistaken.
But it's not this year though.
No.
And that
Malcolm
offense
Brown,
still,
Malcolm
still
Brown.
clearly runs through him. So
Yes.
you don't have to worry about anything there.
I think the tough thing to repeat will be the 6 receiving touchdowns. That's rare.
You know why? You know why it's going to be hard to reach that 6 receiving touchdowns, Rocco.
I was already going to make a joke about, the regression because, apparently Brandon Cooks is breaking every receiving record, for them. But
all right, you said no. You don't talk
there.
anymore. Don't talk anymore. You already said it. Let's just move on from that.
All right. So listen, we're scattered all over the place, but within a point or two at 2 through 4. So we could argue whether we think Lev Bell is 2 or David Johnson's 3, whatever. But who do you believe from 2 to 4 that Lev Bell, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott is the safest pick? And then who do you believe could be the highest risk in that group?
I think the safest is Zeke. I mean, I have him rated the lowest because I don't think his ceiling is as high as the other 2. But in terms of going out there and giving you production every week, playing on a team that is geared towards him with a solid offensive line, I mean, he's definitely Miles said a couple of days ago to us, he's got probably the best chance of any of these 3 leading the league in rushing. You know what I mean? So I think he's the safest of them. Obviously, the other 2 give you such an extreme dynamic in the passing game that's why we have them higher. But if other factors happen, that those might not be as sustainable as Zeke just rushing for 100 yards a week.
Yeah, I think also he has the lowest injury history. He has the most productivity as per a 16-game basis. And even without a known receiver, we don't know what he has there. He has the most security in my mind at this point, with DJ returning from an injury, a new quarterback, new offense, Bell's injury history, and now the emergence of another receiver. And we don't know what's happening with this contract yet. So I think you have the most knowns with Zeke too.
I think the safest one's Lev, personally. I mean, we'd say injury history, and rightfully so at some point, but he hasn't missed a game due to injury since 2015. So it's just one of those, like, you label a guy 3 years ago that he's not safe, and he's been safe 2 straight years.
Yeah.
I mean, albeit you look at his game logs, it's 12 games in 2016 because of a suspension. It's 15 games last year, but that's because the last 2 years he hasn't had to play week 17. And as a fantasy player, I don't care about week 17 at all. But I mean, there's a lot of volatility with the Cowboys offense right now. I love Zeke. I would put money on him to lead the league in rushing, but I wouldn't put money on the Cowboys to score anywhere near the points the Steelers will. And it's the same thing with the Cardinals for me. So it's splitting hairs. I mean, I don't have an answer for who's the biggest risk, because I don't think any of them are a risk at all.
Yeah, and I think the way I kind of catered the question too was I was kind of hoping to shed some light on the whole Lev Bell isn't necessarily a safe pick kind of thing. And you just nailed that. You mentioned it. He's pretty much a lock to be a top 5 fantasy scorer.
Yeah.
Based on the last 2 years of data.
Right. Well, yeah. 2 years ago he was third, and last year he was second. And I talked about what I loved about Brandon Cooks last week. I'm sorry. You can kind of write down his stat line. You know what you're getting from him, and that's the same thing with Lev. The last 2 years, 1268 and 1291 rushing, 616 and 655 receiving, 9 touchdowns and 11 touchdowns. I mean, the guy's not all over the place. So not only is he consistent, like I love with Cooks, but he's consistently elite, which Cooks is just consistently good. So I don't think Lev's a risk, especially with the news that it's very possible tomorrow we're going to hear about this extension. And I think that financially secure, he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's not going to try as hard anymore, but he does strike me as the kind of guy that maybe pressed a little bit to try to get that money, and now he may have it tomorrow.
I actually, I'll be honest, I listed DJ as the biggest risk here, not because I think he's going to fall outside the top 10 or anything like that, but just from the standpoint of playing with a new quarterback, maybe playing with 2 new quarterbacks during the course of this year at some point, playing with a new head coach, in an offense that you're not as familiar with. He's had the most things change around him, especially considering the fact that he hasn't played played real football in 2 seasons. He missed basically all of last year. So now you add that to all the other factors. And like I said, I don't think there's any reason to believe that he's going to be like one of those guys that goes from, superstar to outside the top 10 in a year. But he definitely comes with the biggest risk of this top 5 group, this top 4 grouping.
That's fair.
The new coach scares me, but playing with Sam Bradford, I love.
Oh yeah, he's going to catch 200 balls.
Check down Sammy, man, and now he actually has an incredible receiving back. The guy was targeting DeMarco Murray like it was his job. DeMarco Murray and Ryan Matthews got targets like crazy. Now you're getting a guy who has legitimate 1,000-yard receiving potential. As a running back.
I understand that too, but we don't even know if Sam's going to be the guy for the whole season. You know what I mean?
No,
I think it's safe to say he's not.
It's pretty better than even money that he's not. But when he is in there, I love the targets.
Yeah.
All right. So the last point in this group here, we've got Saquon Barkley, the rookie, at number 5. Nationally, he's averaging running back number 6 right now. Is the fantasy community too high on Saquon Barkley based largely on potential alone?
No.
I was gonna say I know I ranked him this high, but maybe. Like, I understand that the potential is through the roof with this guy. The potential to be the most talented back in the NFL. I get all of that. You got a bad offensive line with an aging quarterback, and yes, the weapons on the outside are awesome. So you can't stack the box on him, which is a great thing for him. It's just one of those things where, like, based on potential, this guy should be number 1. So maybe that's why we don't have him too high. But based on line play and scheme, it does concern me some. I'm not going to lie to you and say it doesn't concern me at all.
I kind of think, I'll crush the Giants line with you all day. We can just have a fun time talking about it. Although they did upgrade. Nate Solder, believe it or not, is an upgrade. Will Hernandez is a great draft pick. I love that.
That is a great draft
and
pick.
Especially for the run game. You know what I mean? He's going to get after it in that run game. But, 2 years ago, DJ, number 1 fantasy back, the Cardinals line was trash. It's nothing to write home about. Last year, the Rams line was better. Nothing to write home about. And Todd was 50 couple points ahead. He's a special, special guy. And I think on top of that, for me, we've now seen 3 straight years going back to Gurley and Melvin Gordon as rookies, where rookies were major fantasy contributors at running back. You had DJ, Todd and Melvin, then you had Zeke going nuts, being a top 2 scorer in 2016. And then last year, Hunt, Kamara, these guys are all over the place. So I'm not scared of the rookie thing. And
the rookie thing definitely.
Well, he's a better player than everyone I just said. It's
not like, I don't want our listeners to think, for me, it's not a rookie thing. It's just more of a offensive line and scheme thing. Like, I know you said Nate Solder, and he's definitely an upgrade over what they had, but he's still like 100 years old. Like,
I'm not going that far, but
no, I won't go that far. But he's been with the Patriots now for forever. Like, they know when to let guys go. We've historically said that. You know what I mean? So yes, it's an upgrade because their tackles were terrible, but I'm not resting my hat on. Oh, well, they went out and got Nate Solder. Like, I'm still worried about that line.
I'm more with him and Hernandez. They should be able to run really successfully to the left side.
Yeah. And I think, historically what we've seen over the last couple of years, when you look at Zeke, you look at Kareem Hunt, you look at Kamara, it's not a league where guys at the running back position can't come in and be productive right away anymore. So, one of the main reasons why we put this in here at this point in the agenda, if you're the kind of player who is thinking, man, Saquon Barkley is going to be a steal, I would kind of temper my expectations because you're going to have to pay a premium to get him.
Yeah.
By the time that you're drafting, mid to late August, I think Barkley is a lock in this top 5 zone. I really do. That price is just going to continue to grow. So there was a lot of early sentiment that like he's a top of the second round kind of guy. And I just don't think he's going to fall that far for you, unfortunately. So just kind of to reset the expectations there. All right, let's talk about numbers 6 through 10. I think conversation is going to get interesting here because there's a lot of really good running backs here, and it's not as cut and dry, at least opinions-wise, as the top 5. So we've got number 6, Kareem Hunt, Alvin Kamara, Melvin Gordon, Dalvin Cook, and Leonard Fournette rounding out our top 10 here. So 2 of us have Kareem Hunt at number 5, and 2 are in the 8 and 9 range. So what's driving the difference? Because, that's 1.8 points of variation there. So, I'll throw it over to Miles and Rocco. You guys are a little bit lower on them. So what's the thought process there?
I'm sorry. Got to pay attention. I thought we were talking to Kamara there. Yeah. Sorry.
Not yet.
So I got the Kareem Hunt thing going on. Yeah, I'm a little lower on Kareem Hunt. Now, bear with me here because this is going to sound ridiculous on the surface, but the Chiefs still have Charkandrick West. They're getting Spencer Ware back.
Charmander?
Yeah, I'm telling you. They signed Damian and Kerwin Williams in free agency. None of these dudes are even close to Kareem Hunt. So, Deal, you're shaking your head. That's not what I'm saying.
Thank you for clarifying.
I thought we were about to ask Kerwin Williams.
What I am saying is that as far as any of these top 10 elite tier backs, I think the Chiefs are building the closest thing to a committee as we can see. And on top of that, what scares me, just trust me, when I say committee, I'm not saying 50-50, 60-40 stuff, but I'm saying there might be a series we don't see Kareem Hunt every once in a while. And I don't see that with the other guys. More importantly, now that I've lost everybody, I don't trust Andy Reid at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
He has history, not with Kareem Hunt, but with everybody, where he has weeks where he just doesn't care about frequently running the ball. I'm hesitant is all. If I have teams where I end up and I feel like Kareem Hunt's the right pick, I'm cool with that. I'm all over him. All I'm saying is I'm hesitant to put him over these other guys like Melvin Gordon, like Alvin Kamara, who I thought we were about to talk about. All right, like Dalvin Cook, who I think are not only clear lead backs, which Kareem Hunt's a clear lead back, but he definitely has the best depth behind him versus these other guys.
Well, let me jump in. Do you think he is a 300 carry back? Because that's really ultimately what it comes down to.
Probably not.
Right. So if you don't believe he's a 300 carry back, then, rightfully so, you have him in a good spot. So
just because I don't trust Andy to not have 2-3 weeks where he has 8.
Right.
Like Miles, I'm even going to argue with something you said. You said not with Kareem Hunt. Yes, with Kareem Hunt. Last year,
I meant not just with Kareem Hunt.
Oh, okay.
Everybody that Andy's coached.
I was going to say, I just looked it up. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of 11 or less carries.
Right.
Like this is supposed to be your bell guy guy.
Right.
Like that doesn't make sense. Like Andy ignores the running back for a large portion of the time, and I am coming around to the idea of Pat Mahomes, based on some other stats I've seen just from the Chiefs in general with Alex Smith. But still, there's going to be some kind of learning curve there. He's not just going to come in and just, Very, very, very rarely do we see a guy step on the field at the quarterback position and just take over the NFL. Like, so I'm keeping that in the back of my head, as that will also affect what Kareem Hunt is able to do. So, those two things combined, like I said, we're not talking about me moving him from, you guys have him at 5 and I have him at 15. We're still within 5 here, so.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, it's important when you go back to the amount of touches, if that's where you think that he is, he's a 250 to 270 carry guy, that's fine. Where I'm interested in him, I think he's going to be more involved in the passing game this year.
Too.
And they've said that.
Yeah,
they want to get him more involved in the passing game.
I mean, look at even when he had games where he had 9 carries, he catches 5 for 89. So, I mean, if they get him more involved, and especially with a younger quarterback, that's really intriguing to me, because I feel like that's an area of his game that they really just started to unpackage.
I think he moves up in rushing attempts. He was number 6 in attempts, and he still led the league in rushing last year. You have to give that guy a ball more. He trailed Bell by almost 50 rushes. He also only caught 53 passes, but even with 53, I think that goes way up. And with 53, of the top 10 receiving backs in the league, he had by far the best catch percentage. He was at 84% catch. So you got to pass him the ball too. He's not dropping the ball. So I think he gets more catches, more rushes. So he has to move up for me. And what was he last year? 3, right? So
just out of curiosity, when you say way up in the passing game for a guy who already has 53 receptions coming out of the backfield, what are you saying there? Like,
I think he gets 70.
Yeah, he could hit 70. And that is way up. I mean,
that's just such a huge number to project.
It's a 33% increase, 34% increase, and that's
I think he gets 70.
It's very possible.
I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm just shocked at like what that would mean for their offense to include him, to keep him at his current carry total, and then give him an additional. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to start. That means you're going to start not ignoring. But that means that touches have to come away from other guys. Well, you know what I mean?
What's nice about the Chiefs is they're kind of built for that, because we talked about Tyreek last week, and we could even talk about Sammy Watkins with this. They're not guys who need a lot of touches to be super effective.
Right.
So it's not like telling Jarvis Landry, listen, you're only getting 90 catches this year. Well, then you're an average receiver. But they're not going to have anybody approach 90 catches, so that's kind of nice. Yeah. I think what it boils down to me, and we kind of talked about this, where like from 5 to 12, it's personal preference, and it's not anybody's right or wrong. And for me, the thing on Hunt is if I draft Kareem Hunt in the first round, I'm okay with that because I think he's going to end up very well. But I also am taking a first-round player that I'm about 90% positive there's going to be 3 to 4 weeks where I'm infuriated that he was in my lineup. And that's a scary thing to do with your first-round pick.
Sure. It's a valid concern. And I think a lot of it, too, like we kind of have that Andy Reid taste in our mouth.
Right.
So
I watch too much Andy where I'm like, why is Westbrook not touching the ball?
Yeah, and you think to yourself over and over again, like, okay, he has to realize now. No, he's got to realize, and he just doesn't learn. So
my dude's been a head coach. It'll be his 20th year as a head coach. He is what he is at this point.
All right, so you mentioned that, 5 through 12, like nobody's really wrong, but I'm going to take
– oh, no.
I'm going to take a stab at one here. So Rocco's not as high a believer in Alvin Kamara. He's got him at 10th in our rankings. Deal's got him 7. Miles has him 5. I've got him 6. He is 7th overall. He's got 1.5 points of variation in our rankings. He is the highest on Leonard Fournette, who he's got at 5th. Everyone mostly feels the opposite there to Rocco in our group. So I just kind of want to hear from Rocco's perspective, what's driving that.
All right. So for the same reason that I said that Zeke was my safest pick in the top 4, and we talked about the regression of Todd Gurley, those are the same reasons why I'm kind of backwards from you two on these two guys here. That offense in Jacksonville is absolutely going through Leonard Fournette. For all the talk about, Hunt only getting about 250 touches, Leonard will clear 300 touches this year. That's going to happen. He will continue to approach his 5-yard per carry average. I look for him to be just as close in leading the league in rushing as I do for a guy like Zeke. I just think that's what he's built for. Now, obviously, he takes a huge hit in the passing game, which is why I don't have him higher than I do. You know what I mean? Because if he was a better receiver out of the backfield, or they used him that way, he would be up there in the top 2 or 3 for me, because he's built to run the football. This is a guy that we were all super high on when he was coming out of college because of his just raw skill of running the ball. And now he's on a team that is basically just lining up their offense to do just that. On the reverse, we have a guy like Kamara, who was extremely touchdown dependent, because he's not going to be a 1,000-yard back in either rushing or receiving. He's going to be a total of a 1,000-yard back. I get that, between the two. But you're talking about, if everything's the same, it's silly to assume that Kamara can't do the same as last year. Well, everything's not the same. Mark Ingram is gone for 4 weeks, and we don't know what Kamara's production is going to look like in those 4 weeks. We would like to think it's going to be high, but it might not. And if they don't start out 4-0 or 3-1, and they start out 0-4, then the entire philosophy of your season changes. You can't tell me that everything's the same going year to year when you have pieces coming in and out, like your lead back from last year, missing the first 4 games. There's no change of philosophy here. I understand that, but there's too many question marks for me with Kamara, and I don't see as many question marks with Fournette.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad that you mentioned the regression thing, because I so badly want to shoot a hole in that regression argument for Alvin Kamara. And it's not really like a me versus you thing. And for those who might be listening for one of the first times, like Rocco and I definitely go at it quite a bit, but it's not about it this time, because I just have an issue with this Alvin Kamara regression thing that's out there right now. Look, his first 4 games last year kind of put a damper on his per game average because they were still forcing the ball to Adrian Peterson. After AP, he had 9.5 carries a game. He averaged 6.1 yards per carry. I understand he's not going to average 6.1 yards per carry, but if he averages 4.6 yards per carry and still gets 9.5 or 10 carries a game, which most likely he's going to with Mark Ingram down for 4 weeks, he's going to run for at least 730 yards, which he ran for 728 last year. I don't see him being any less of a threat in the passing game. He had 81 catches last year. The other back is gone. The Saints, for the past 5 years, have been number 5 at the lowest in the league in targeting their running back out of the backfield. 13 touchdowns. You're right. It's likely not sustainable, but why can't it be?
I think you're wrong.
I just say not sustainable just to appease the argument, but why are we surprised if he gets double-digit touchdowns?
I'm not surprised by it, but we talk all the time about how guys who get double digits are very less likely to get back to that number the following year.
No, guys that get 19, that get 19 are unlikely to repeat.
He had 120 carries last year. The dude's just warming up.
6 yards per carry. Here's my question: why is Alvin Kamara not Jamal Charles without knee injuries? That's. People are looking at Kamara because he was a part-time back at Tennessee. Well, as an SEC fan, Tennessee's coaches are dumb. Yes. They always have been. They will continue to be till the end of time. There's no reason this guy's splitting carries. Then he comes to the Saints and he's splitting carries. And we think he's only effective in bursts. That's not what he's Jamal Charles. Again.
If he regresses 4 or 5 touchdowns.
Let me just finish real quick.
Okay.
You say he won't finish with 6 yards per carry. Why not? Jamal Charles was right there for his entire career. He was up there. That's what he is. He's not going to run for 6 yards every time he touches the ball, but it's Tyreek Hill again. I mean, it's so circular, and it's funny because when you run a podcast like this, you just find out what certain guys don't like certain types of players, and that's fine. It's not right or wrong. I love the guy that's going to give me an 80-yard touchdown every once in a while. I love it. And I'm not going to pick on you about Fournette. You have him 5th. I'm fine. I think he's a beast, and they added Andrew Norwell. I love Fournette. I'm cool. I have him 10th because I have ankle injury worries. But I just – to be down on Kamara, the only possible argument is he'll regress, and you have no reason to think that. None. 13 touchdowns isn't 22. It's 13.
And when I'm saying, those regression numbers, I'm just giving you a worst case scenario. Just telling you how easy it'll be to at least repeat.
I hear you. Right.
So even
Yardage
if he
wise,
scored,
it's ridiculous to think he won't.
Right. Even if he scored 4 or 5 less touchdowns over the past 3 years, average wise, guess what number running back he would have finished? Or
Probably
will finish?
or so.
Running back 3. Because he was still 25 to 30 points ahead of running back 4. So I'm going to make this statement right now. I've got him too low at 6. I was in on him early on as a first rounder. I'm all the way up. No one could stop me. I'm all the way up. Write it down. Alvin Kamara, 2018 RB1.
Yeah, please write that down, because as much as I just went nuts about him, he's still 5 at his ceiling.
Oh my God.
As far as pre-ranks, I mean, I'm not. He could end.
No, that's what I mean. Like, I'm not going to pre-rank him number 1 because
please write it down,
because the floor isn't anywhere near.
I already
solid.
changed your pre-rankings. So.
I have never said anything that ridiculous
No,
in the 119 podcasts that we've done.
That's not true.
He finished 3. It's not that ridiculous to say he's going to finish 1.
He only had 120.
He finished 3. He finished 3 because Zeke missed 6 games. David Johnson missed an entire season. Like, come on,
guys aren't going to get hurt or miss games. Like,
he finished 3 despite having like 90 fewer touches than everyone else. No, not 90's not even close.
You can write it down. You can write it down. Alvin Kamara will not be double-digit touchdowns this year.
He had less than half the touches of Le'Veon Bell, and
you can write
20.
You can write it down. Alvin Kamara is not finishing with double-digit touchdowns.
So when he has 9 touchdowns, but he has like 1,700 yards, what's that going to
You're
matter?
gonna be like, I told you.
Right.
My whole argument here was that the touchdowns are not sustainable.
But everything else is.
Hey, write that down too. Both of those things, write them down, because Deal, you and I are both +1 on these two. I'll write it down this year.
I know we've been on this for too long, but I can't let go of the Kareem Hunt thing, because Leonard Fournette averaged 3.9 yards per carry last year. Kareem Hunt averaged 4.9. He was number 4 in the league. Leo was number 28 in the league. So how can you possibly rank Leo ahead of him so confidently? Even if they get their average, and Leo has 300 touches, which I think Kareem Hunt still dominates him in receiving and has 1 yard better per carry. It doesn't make sense.
Well, it does. It makes sense in the fact of I don't see a 20 reception jump for a Hunt in the passing game.
Even if it's the same. Even if they're both the same.
What do you mean if it's both the same?
If they're both the same and Leo adds, you said that he's a 300 touch guy. Well, he was last year too. So if he even averages the same numbers, but maybe gets a couple more carries, he's still so far behind Hunt.
I look at the two as, for me, Leo is in an offense built for him. Hunt is not in an offense built for him.
I think if you want to make that argument, the obvious case for you, Rocco, is touchdowns, because Kareem Hunt had how many touchdowns in like the first 4 weeks, and then he went on like an 8-game bender where he didn't find pay dirt at all. So
yeah, I mean,
I think it's silly to expect Fournette to only get 10 again.
That's possible, but even if he gets 20 more touches, 30 more touches, and 12 touchdowns,
and maybe
he's still behind.
Maybe it's a. I also don't believe 3.9 yards per carry is Fournette again. I just think I think he played as poorly as he could in games last year. I mean, he was bad for games, and now they've boosted the line. He's just too good to be a 3.9 yard per carry back. Now, if he does it again, he's just a bust.
I think he was banged up, to be honest with you.
I mean, he struggled with his ankle all year. And what it boils down to is, we're getting nitpicky because we all have a guy. Rock loves Fournette. I love Kamara. You love Hunt. And
I love Fournette too.
Right. I like all three, and I'll put all 3 of them on any fantasy team I have.
Of course.
But it's a matter of I'm gonna stand on the table for Kamara when it's the 3 of them against each other. You know what I mean?
I stood on the table for the Colts to draft him, and they didn't.
All right. Listen, let's take a quick pause here and talk about our friends at Gorb. If you haven't seen the movement on social media, you must not be on social media, because it's all over my feeds, Facebook, Twitter. I've seen it on the Instagram as well. It's all over the place. The hashtag Gorb, GHORBH. And the message of Gorb is that in life, you've got two choices. You could either get hungry or be hungry. And for those of you watching on the live show right here on YouTube, Miles is hungry. He's got that Gorb gear on right now. He's looking comfortable. You know, it's
I'm feeling
stylish.
pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good.
And it gives you that constant reminder that in life, you've got two choices. You could either get hungry or be hungry. You've got to check them out at gorb.com, GHORBH.com. Check out all the great gear that they've got, all the different colors, sizes, styles for men, for women, for kids. They've got something for everyone. It'll give you that constant reminder that you could either get hungry or be hungry. Gorb.com. Check them out today. All right, let's talk about our number 11 through 15 backs here. Number 11, we've got Devonta Freeman, followed by Joe Mixon, Jordan Howard, LaShawn McCoy, and Jerick McKinnon. We don't have a ton of variation within this group, surprisingly, but we are higher than the national average on Joe Mixtape Mixon. We've got him 12th for us. He's 17th nationally. What have we seen other than potential to buy in that high?
I think the situation's gotten a lot better because honestly, he wasn't real great last year most of the time when he got his opportunity. But then you look at, week 2, they got a new offensive coordinator. And we talk about sometimes it's hard to get a new offensive coordinator in January and understand the system. They got one week 2. Right. So now you got a full offseason under Bill Lazor. They add Cordy Glenn and Frank Ragnow on the offensive line. So that's nasty. But on top of that, for me, when you look at the last 6 games of the season for the Bengals, he was at or above 4 yards per carry, and he scored twice in those games. So, again, not lighting the world on fire in those games, but he did certainly improve over his struggles early in the season. And he looked good in the receiving game all year last year. It was the running game where he kind of looked bogged down, and they're just better. I mean, they're better up front. They're better with their system, and he's a year older.
I think that's the thing I wanted to make sure we highlighted was that they made a commitment to improve that offensive line.
Yeah.
And I think that was really the key because Cincinnati is a team who historically, under Marvin Lewis has wanted to run the ball. So I don't think that's going to change. And I think that their commitment with draft picks and with making a trade, that just cements that he's going to get a fair shot with legitimate talent in front of him.
Yeah, so let me correct myself real quick. I said Frank Ragnow. They drafted Billy Price, not Ragnow. I had the wrong center guard in my mind there.
I also, if you just go back and watch his highlights, that's when you'll be reminded of why we have him so high, because he's an unbelievably explosive player. And I've heard rumor about Marvin Lewis' hate for rookie running backs or running backs in general. So I looked into it. In his time with the Bengals, which was way too long, he drafted 134 players. Have a guess how many of those were running backs?
I'm going to guess Jeremy Hill and Gio Bernard and Joe.
No, it was a little more. He drafted 11 running backs in 15 years. And other than Mixon, Gio, and Hill, the last 3, the other guys combined, 8 other players combined for 523 total yards for 8 players. 5 of them failed to see the field. So I think it was 2017. And the mixtape there was partly just a lost season for the Bengals. Part of it was Marvin Lewis just being terrible. That's a big part. Part of it was they were working him in slowly as a rookie. And part of it, like I talked about before, was I think that still that blemish record PR move where they're like, there's no reason to push it right now. And partly of it was just a fluke of him being outside the running back room and them trying to figure out if they have anything else other than him in there. So working everybody else through.
Yeah, I mean, it's a plus that Jeremy Hill is now no longer there. I mean, he only got 37 carries last year. That was 37 too many. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think this year we're going to see more of a I still think that Gio's going to get some touches here, but I think you're going to see more of like a Joe as your early down back with Gio mixing in as a change of pace, or we're going to get, entire series from Joe and then a series or 2 from Gio. and then back to Joe. You know what I mean? So I just think it's not a change of philosophy, but really utilizing him for what he does best now in year 2 from year 1.
I think a change of philosophy too, but I would actually be shocked if there are many series where we don't see Joe Mixon.
Yeah. Gio's going to get his. They're not going to.
Of course, and he's good.
And that's kind of part of a reason why Joe Mixon's down in this group for me, because he's not the Melvin Gordon. Austin Eckler's my backup. I mean, Gio Bernard can play.
Yeah, he's a good back.
Well, as a guy who owned Melvin Gordon last year, I'll tell you, Austin Eckler still got way too many touches.
That's just true. It wasn't that he got a ton of touches. He scored too much. Stop scoring from 30 yards out on screen passes.
Get out the end zone.
Be worse.
All right, so would Jordan Howard be a top 10 guy if not for Tariq Cohen, or is this just the appropriate range for him? I can't figure it out because, like, this is a guy who we know is going to run for 1,000. This is a guy who we know is going to be right around that 10 touchdown mark. So what gives?
I think it depends on your settings. If you're not in PPR, then yeah, I think move him up. But if it's 0.5 or definitely if it's 1 PPR, other guys are just more valuable. And I don't think it's because of Tariq Cohen. If it wasn't him, it would be somebody else. He's just not a great receiving back. So he's going to be solid for you. And probably for your RB2 in most scenarios, it's going to be a really good situation, but I can't see moving him inside the top 10.
Yeah, in a PPR format, 23 catches is not enough.
Yeah, it's not
doing it. It's just not, So I would not be surprised at all if he finishes the season among the top 10, but it's going to be because he's, got 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns. Like that's what he's going to give you. And that's nothing to scoff at. It's just the upside of the other guys, especially in the receiving department, is just too much.
I think something that really bodes well for him, really, really in his favor, is we've talked about Chicago's offense a couple times the last few weeks. Going to be better. Still nowhere near as good as the Chiefs, though, as far as total weapons. So where I'm going here, the hiring of Matt Nagy is going to be big for Jordan Howard, I think, because apparently in December last year is where Andy Reid turned over play calling to Matt Nagy. Nagy's first game, Rock, you're going to like this. Nagy's first game as the play caller, he gave Kareem Hunt 9 carries, and the Chiefs lost to the Jets. So fall to 6-6.
Yeah.
And then he was smart enough. We always bang on Andy Reid for not doing that. He learned from his ways. The next 3 weeks, the Chiefs went 3-0. But more importantly, Kareem Hunt got 25, 24, and 29 carries in those games.
Yep.
So I think something Matt Nagy learned is, hey, if I've got a bell cow back, if I've got a stud back, he's got to get the ball. So kind of what I just said about Gio Bernard, Tariq Cohen's going to get some. And it'll be frustrating to own Howard and watch. Tariq's going to score more than he did last year, more than likely. But I think what helps is their new head coach was just the offensive coordinator on a team that had a lot of weapons, but realize my offense with a lot of weapons is at its best when I'm feeding my bell cow. So I know I didn't really answer the question. I just think we're kind of right, because as good as he's been, he finished 12th and 10th in half PPR his 2 seasons. I mean, this is what he is, because his ceiling in PPR or half is so limited by the fact that, like, he's even all over Twitter now saying, I need to learn how to catch. Like, I can't catch. I read something from him earlier today saying it was back in high school. I didn't know where to put my hands. Like, my man just can't catch. So even if he works on it, what's he going to be, a 30 catch back?
Right.
He's not catching 60 balls.
I think another fear here is, obviously we all expect Chicago's offense to get better, but just looking at like his per game last year, he had 4 games of over 100 yards, and he also had 4 games of under 50 yards. And if you want to talk about usage, one of those games was 22 carries for 44 yards.
Yeah, those are weak killers.
Those are weak killers. And just for argument's sake, that was week 15.
So your semifinal.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is a guy where like you know he's going to finish with 1,000 yards and close to 10 touchdowns, but you don't know when it's going to come or how it's going to come, and not knowing if he's going to be in full stride come playoff time, that hurts.
Right. Real quick, a roster construction thing, and to each their own on how you do your team. But I think, like, if I take Kamara, I love Howard as my RB2. I love that guy that, like, I kind of know what Howard's going to do. he's not going to finish RB2, but he's not going to finish RB30, barring injury. So Kamara is a more volatile player. Well, I need a little more consistency with Howard to kind of equal out what might happen with Kamara if he does somehow not get double-digit touchdowns.
RB2 is a great place to have a good floor.
Yeah, right.
He reminds me so much of Frank Gore.
Yeah.
Just so much. Like, goes out there, does his job, gets 1,000 yards, calls it a day. Like, that's just what Jordan Howard is. And Frank Gore was never like, oh, I'm a top 5 fantasy back.
No.
But everybody loved owning him because he was good for 1,010.
1,000 yards in a day. I would call that a day. That's got to be a record.
That is a day.
All right, let's talk quick about Jerick McKinnon. Most people are looking at McKinnon as a steal in PPR formats. If you look at different publications, most people have him as a sleeper or as the kind of guy you want to target this year. Do you see him breaking out with an increased role? That's the biggest question. He's not had to take on the workload yet. So with an increased role, we're assuming he's going to get one. Do you see him breaking out?
I'm honestly kind of cooling on him. I was really big. I thought Jerick was going to be like the guy I targeted like crazy when I was kind of starting to flirt with fantasy stuff in April, looking around. But, he's slotted properly because, like you just said, his role. I mean,
right.
I always am attracted to players that a coach or a front office purposely targets when they have a big role. They go out, they either draft him really early or give him a big contract like they just did, especially when it's an offensive mastermind like we think Kyle Shanahan is. So if you focus on the fact that Kyle Shanahan wants this guy to fill the Devonta Freeman, Carlos Hyde role, when I say the Carlos Hyde wasn't properly suited to do that, but they still did it, well, then he's super attractive. But if you try to let yourself remember, this is the same player that couldn't beat out Matt Asiata, and he couldn't beat out Latavius Murray when Peterson and Cook went down with injuries on multiple seasons. This is a guy. I mean, if you're in a timeshare with Matt Asiata, I don't know. So I'm starting to let my brain kind of go there. I think, like you said, the role is nice, but he's easily the least talented player we've discussed to this point. So where do you slot a guy like that? What do you do with him?
That's my biggest holdup is I can't get over the fact that if this guy was worth the contract that they pushed across the table to him in San Francisco, why wasn't he the guy in Minnesota once they had Peterson injuries or once they moved on from Peterson? They went out and they made free agent acquisitions, and Matt Asiata was still a fantasy relevant name, and we had to painfully talk about him like for 4 or 5 weeks every year as a touchdown vulture. I don't know. There's just something about him. And I don't know if it's just the whole, I need to see what he does with more touches kind of approach, but none of his, yards per attempt or yards per catch or any of that stuff really jumps off the page at me. And I don't know how much better the 49ers are, at least right now, than the Vikings teams that he was on. So that's a little scary to me.
I think worse.
Yeah. Especially last year. It might be a situation, though, and this, again, I'm so circular with this guy where maybe he's not that good, but Kyle Shanahan knows exactly what he wants in his running back.
I think that's my biggest point here. It's a system usage thing. Like, Kyle Shanahan knows exactly what he wants his running backs to be able to do. He feels McKinnon can do it, so he went out and got McKinnon to do
and
that.
Maybe not only that, but maybe he feels like McKinnon is the perfect guy to do it.
Yeah.
You look at Bill Walsh back in the day. Joe Montana wasn't that good, but Bill Walsh knew his West Coast system, and he spent a 3rd-round pick on Joe Montana, and it was a perfect fit. And now, until recently, Joe Montana was everybody's answer to who's the best quarterback ever. So McKinnon doesn't have to be good; he just needs to be a perfect fit.
This is we bang on the Patriots all the time because they don't never have the most talented team, other than Tom Brady. They get a bunch of guys who do exactly what they want them to do. So I'm not going to fault Kyle Shanahan for thinking that this guy is that for him. Listen, the Vikings have been traditionally more of a pound it running style team. Like, that's what Adrian Peterson was for years. That's what Matt Asiata is. That's what Latavius Murray is.
Right.
Like that's what they are. That is not what Jerick McKinnon is, and I'm not faulting him for that. I'm also not anointing him to my top 10, but this is like a perfect spot for a guy who's got, I think, a ton of upside in an offense that wants him to be there.
Yeah, I've been the resident Jerick McKinnon hater for a long time, but you know, in the past 2 seasons, he's averaged 3.4 and 3.8 yards per carry. That has to go up. But in watching him, he seems like the type of player that gets better as he's used, as he's on the field and he's getting carries, carry after carry. He gets better. So I think that really bodes in his favor, that he's going to be used. He's going to have that 20, 25 carries per game, at least 20, 25 touches per game. He's an excellent receiver. So if he figures out how to take his explosive nature as a receiver over to being a runner, he's going to be a really dangerous guy.
All right, let's talk about our numbers 16 through 20 running backs. We've got Christian McCaffrey, Darius Geis, Ronald Jones II, Rashad Penny, and Kenyon Drake rounding out our top 20 here. So we have 3 rookies in this grouping and 4 in the top 20. Most publications and sites are close to that as well, except for Ronald Jones. So, we're much higher on him. We've got him 18th overall. He's 26th on a national level as far as where people are pre-ranking him. What do you attribute that to?
I'll start this because I am not the biggest Ronald Jones fan. I've said that from day one. But this is a team that's been hurting for a running back for a long time. And Doug Martin was supposed to be that guy, and it just kept not working. And it kept, he kept, either not underperforming or not being there completely. And they have rotated so many guys in there. I don't think that that's ever the plan. I think they want a guy, and they went out and got a guy. So as much as I'm not a huge Ronald Jones fan, I think that the production is going to be there because the touches are going to be there. I could absolutely see this guy getting, in the 15 to 20 touch per game range and living there. And if you're going to get that out of a guy that we have in the top 20, but in our 16 to 20 range, that's a steal.
My concern for him is that, similar to Jordan Howard, I don't think he's the running back Jordan Howard is, but he's equally, if not worse, a receiver as Jordan Howard. So I can't move him. I'm the lowest on him at 20, and I know he's going to get opportunity, but he still has guys there that are going to take touches, and he's not a good receiver unless the 3 years at USC was completely a fluke and he comes in and he's an unbelievable receiver. I don't see any way it gets inside there, even with opportunity.
I don't think they're necessarily looking for a guy who's a good receiver in Tampa.
I am though.
Yeah. But I think the appeal of him is when you look at what Tampa Bay wants to do offensively, we're not going to argue that they had a committee last year and it was ugly. At times it was Jaquiz Rogers, it was Charles Sims. It was a little bit of everybody last year. They still averaged 25 carries per game in the rushing attempts there, 91 rush yards per game. So they're committed to it philosophically. So when you take a guy who has the talent and the potential and you're going to plug him in, even if you're going to give me 19 to 21 carries a game, I think that when you have an ugly situation like they did last year, and we're still fairly productive with it. Now, it was only 8 total rushing touchdowns last year. It was a bad situation, but I just feel like 18 is a good range for a guy who is probably going to get, 17 plus carries a game. I don't think that's unrealistic. They were giving that to Jaquiz Rogers when he was coming in. So it's a guy who really has every opportunity to just take the backfield and completely own it and every facet. So I think it's just a good spot for him.
And let's not ignore this too. I think from a philosophy standpoint, you talk about Ronald Jones not getting the catches at USC. They're just not throwing the ball. And I don't know if that's because he can't catch or it's just a philosophy thing, but guy had what, 20, 35 total catches in college.
If you're a good receiver at USC, you're getting catches though.
You would think, except for the fact that like if he's their most talented offensive player, why would you not try and get him the ball in every way that you can? So like maybe it's just a philosophical standpoint of like we don't really throw to the running back. Like that's not our game.
So while we're talking about rookies here, I'm going to jump down to our bottom question quick. Of the 4 rookies in the top 20, give me a snapshot of how quickly you could see some of these guys contributing. So if you take a Saquon Barkley, you take a Ronald Jones, a Darius Geis, just give me a name that you're confident about and how quickly you feel they're going to contribute.
I think it's immediately for all 4 that we have up here.
Agreed.
I mean Barkley's a given, but then you talk about Rashad Penny, first-round pick, Ronald Jones, second-round pick, and more importantly for both of them, little to no major backfield competition. So they have to get him involved. And then Geis, he certainly has some competition in the backfield. I mean, P. Ryan is okay. Robert Kelly's okay. Chris Thompson's really good. But Geis is definitely heads and shoulders the better player than any of those guys. So I kind of think, aside from the fact that all 4 of them were top 2-round picks, that they have the talent and the lack of competition that I think the teams would kind of be insane not to feature these 4 guys. So from week 1, I think.
Yeah, I agree. How much, that was my exact answer immediately.
My dub answer of the day is obviously we all think they're immediately going to be impacted because we have them all in the top 20. If we didn't think they were going to be on the field, from the beginning, then they wouldn't be top 20 guys for us.
So we've got a question here that just came across live while we're on YouTube here. Someone sent the question and said they have a question about halfbacks. They have Kamara and Crowell starting, but with rookies in mind and young players in mind, if either of them gets hurt, are you confident in starting a guy like Nyheim Hines or Jordan Wilkins from the Colts? Given that you do have Marlon Mack there, but again, these are rookies that they took in the draft. They invested some draft capital in. And they're kind of like on a little bit of a sleeper, target list for a lot of people in fantasy. So what's the thought process there?
I think the danger is at this point, I mean, assuming that's already his team, you have to take both of them then. If you're interested in either, you have to take both because neither one is definitely a set answer right now, especially with Mac there.
Yeah, we have no idea what the Colts backfield is going to look like.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, and we're going to talk about this with our next 20 next week. We all kind of like Marlon Mack. He gets kind of knocked a little bit because he didn't have the greatest rookie year. Well, a lot of guys don't have a great rookie year. And it's not like Hines or Wilkins has this, like I just talked about, second-round draft capital where we're going to try to force him on the field. They were later-round picks. Right. So, honestly, my answer would be you really need to find a better RB3 somewhere. He did just say he does currently have both, which is nice, though, because I think by the time you have to worry about it with Kamara and Crowell, I like as your top 2, the Colts situation will have figured itself out a little bit. So you'll kind of know which one has the role, either behind Mac or alongside Mac in a timeshare.
This must be like a 32-person league.
I don't know about that.
That's a deep league if he currently has Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins.
I mean, I will say Nyheim Hines is fun to watch. They're going to get him touches. Yeah. Even if Marlon Mack looks good, he's going to have at least that Tariq Cohen role from last year for the Bears. I mean, he's going to be involved.
Yeah, I was just going to say he's got that whole entire package and that Tariq Cohen kind of aura about him where he could take it to the house from anywhere. Yeah. So I mean, at the very least, he's someone that I'm intrigued in, from a big play perspective. So, all right. So just real quickly here, last question I'm going to ask. Who's the biggest shock to you that we have in the top 20?
I don't think anyone's a big shock. I mean, I don't think we're ridiculous on any of these guys. I'm the lowest in the group on Kenyon Drake, but it's 0% that I don't love Drake, and it's 100% that I don't trust the Dolphins even a little bit. I mean, they traded Jay Ajayi last year and still tried their hardest to get Damian Williams overly involved. So I don't know about that. Then after Damian went down, Drake was incredible down the stretch. He had at least 90 yards in 4 of their last 5 games. So how do the Dolphins reward him? They sign Frank Gore. Rock, you're wearing his shirt. I mean, they signed Frank Gore to come in and take some early down work away. And then they draft Kalen Ballage, who has his limitations as a back. He has probably the agility rating of my 2-year-old daughter. But
Dante Foreman.
Yeah, no kidding. But straight line downfield, he's as fast as anybody, and he makes great plays down the field. So I just don't trust that Miami knows what they're doing or knows what they want to do with Kenyon Drake. So to draft him as my RB2 makes me nervous.
Yeah. I had the same guy, actually, and I have him higher than you. I have him at 21. But even that, for me, is probably too high. I just don't like the rest of the guys around him as much as from a talent standpoint I like Drake. I think Drake is a very talented running back. The Dolphins have not used him correctly at all to this point. It's like really weird. It's like when they use him, he scores and they're in games and they're competitive. And when they don't use him, they suck more than they do on a regular basis. And they can't figure out that like one of those things you should be doing more than the other.
Hashtag analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Drake, when I look at him, like this is a good spot for him right now on July 15th, just because somebody's got to be the guy there. I don't anticipate that it's going to be Frank Gore. I think he's going to be more of like a kind of a spell option at this point. But I also feel like looking at his name there, this is going to be the one that we're going to look at our pre-ranks from 2018 and be like, wow, what were we thinking? You know, like guys like Mack or Ingram or Henry, like why do we have him behind? And I wouldn't be surprised at all. So I don't know. I guess I just don't really know where to put him. And I feel like somebody has to come out of that backfield and be productive. And I think he's the most likely. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the podcast. As we mentioned, we've got part 2 coming for you next week. We'll touch on numbers 21 through 40. Again, the deepest position, the most important position in your fantasy league, in your fantasy drafts. So we want to make sure that we're covering all of the bases here at the running back position. Make sure you're checking out footballgoons.com. We've got our updated rankings almost daily at this point. You know, things are happening around the league. News is breaking. There might be some tweaking here and there. You could also check out our fantasy football community as well. We've got brand new forums there. You could sign up, create your own username on our website. We're going to create just a great fantasy community where you can go and get start sit advice. So, you know, we had a question come in during the show here that we addressed. You know, when you have a lineup question, you're going to be able to submit it on the forum and get feedback from a variety of different people. You'll be able to ask, you know, just general fantasy questions, all kinds of stuff, just creating a community where you can go and get as much feedback as possible for your fantasy football season. Check us out at facebook.com/footballgoons. On the Twitter, we are at footballgoons. And right here on our YouTube channel, you could like, you can comment, you could subscribe to our videos, and we'll be sure to holler back at you along the way. We'll catch you guys next time.